Eat more food? I don't know what's the answer here.
There's a
Yes, sir.
big dispute about the Supreme Court nomination.
Yeah.
You got any ideas about that?
Well, yes, I do. Yes, I do. You know, I mean, we have a process in this country, and it's well established. It's been followed hundreds of times now. And, you know, so the process is partway through. Like, the president has done his part, which is look across the available jurists and choose one and make sure it's a person that is got, you know, the wherewithal to be a Supreme Court justice. And so now I think it's really a, you know, just from a tactical perspective, it's a really bad move on the part of the Republican-led Senate to say we won't consider this. You know, now they always have it's their role to say yes or no, up or down. But to say we won't even consider it, I think is counterproductive, and it adds to this dysfunction in government that I think has not served any of us well. So, yeah, yes, sir.
What's your views on campaign finance?
Well, that's a great question because I'm living this hell right now. Okay? All right, so this is really near and dear to my heart, okay? Our system is broken. It's broken. And the reason I say that is that when you introduce large amounts of unaccountable money into the political system, as Citizens United gave people the authority to do, I believe it's then corrosive on the democratic process. So if I see an ad on the television and I can't tell who put it up there, who's paying for it, maybe you can tell what purpose it has, but it's not accountable. In the political sphere, things should be accountable. If someone takes a vote, they should be accountable for that vote. If they make a speech and come up with a position, they should be accountable for that position. And so we've lost accountability there. And it also gives certain people in this country who are fabulously wealthy a greater voice than those of us who are not wealthy. And as a guy who is from the middle class and remains firmly in the middle class, that bothers me. That somebody could have a greater voice than, you know, whatever I could generate. I don't have, you know, several $1 million to go buy ads for somebody. And so that really bothers me. I think we need to fix that. And again, I'm living that hell right now.
But how
Really?
are you going to fix that? How
Well,
can we fix that?
Well, I think clearly a Supreme, you know, it needs to, there's a process, so it needs to be challenged and it needs to be brought before the Supreme Court again. They made that decision, they can reverse their own decision. There's also ways you could address it legislatively, but I think it'd be cleaner to do it from the judicial side. And then there are other pieces and parts of campaign finance reform that we could make better. I think at the end of the day, if we could have public financing of campaigns where the government came in and said, okay, you know, you meet certain qualifications, you got yourself on the ballot, here's a chunk of money, this is what you have to run. And then if we could shorten the length of campaigns, we would be far better served, okay? And let me just give you a perspective on the length of the campaign. So I spent the last 6 years of my professional career in the Army and then 1 year at the Department of State working overseas with our allies. So all the NATO nations, allies in the Middle East, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Australians. And my friends and colleagues in ministries of defense and ministries of foreign affairs would look at me and go, Mike, we can't understand what you Americans are doing. Because you take 18 months, at least 18 months, maybe 2 years, and you check out from the rest of the world, and you look internally at your own political race for 18 months or 2 years, and you don't do your part as the leading nation in this world. You step aside from that responsibility. So we can count on you being absent for that period of time. And it really, you know, they are our allies. They depend on us, we depend on them. And they look at us and go, that just doesn't make any sense. So we should shorten campaigns. Right. Sorry, I got off on a tangent there. That one's pretty near and dear to my heart, okay? Yes, sir.
No open discussion on political issues without bringing up healthcare would be
Right.
this. This debacle that is the high deductible and copay disaster, and we claim that we have 10 million more people insured, but people have thousands of dollars in deductibles which they can't pay. We claim it's worked out for many people. And it really hasn't. People have tremendous debt based on their health care needs. And, you know, you're a new guy.
Right.
You're not really supposed to know how that all works yet.
Thank you for that.
Well, you know, people spend their whole lives with
Yeah.
healthcare administration. And, have you had a chance to learn anything about the goings-on in Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act?
You know, so my reality is that Kathy and I were in the Army, and, you know, so between West Point and the Army, that's 32 years. We, in essence, were in a single payer program. Okay? That's the way we've set it up for our military. So that's our experience. So I don't know enough about it yet. I know that we have, I think, sold out to some interests in the medical community, and I would highlight the pharmaceutical industry. I would highlight the insurance industry. You know, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act was passed with their support, and big carve-outs were given to them for that support. So we in America now spend somewhere about 30%, 30 cents out of every healthcare dollar goes to administration. Just getting the care from provider to patient. And that's outrageous. You know, the number in Medicare, if I'm not mistaken, is 4%. So 4% in that program. My numbers may be off, but 4% versus about 30%. It's way out of proportion. And then what ends up happening is that we as a population, we spend twice as much on health care than other developed nations do per person. And in some cases, we're getting worse health care delivered. So I have a lot to learn there. I don't know what the answer is yet. I think we have to, we have to continue to address this and make changes and get ourselves to the point where, we get a decent return for the investment, and at the end of the day, we have a healthier population. So I'd be happy to hear any opinions you have on it. You're a physician, so this is the world you work in.
Well, we could go on for hours
Yeah.
on just healthcare. I wouldn't want to get into that. We really made a mess out of it. And as a provider, the paperwork is onerous.
Right.
And when somebody calls and they can't get an appointment for a month, partly because we see fewer patients, because we have to meet things, we have acronyms embedded in acronyms, MACRA and CHIPS and MIPS and Medicare's reimbursement plans. And we spend just endless hours trying to complete the paperwork and meet the requirements. And every version of a payment system is designed to pay providers, hospitals and labs, less. The government never wants to pay more, that's for sure. And now hospitals are operating on an extremely thin margin, and patients are going into debt, and we see fewer patients, and we tell people we have more people insured. It's all working fine. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You know, behind the curtain, there's a disaster going on. So, that's enough. You asked for comments. I'll be quiet now. But, if you're going into Congress,
Yeah.
That's a quagmire. That's a challenge, and you will study that as much as anything else.
Joe, would you want to take the opportunity to sit down with Mike sometime and go through that? I know you and I have had many lengthy conversations about
Yeah.
trying to
No,
understand
I would welcome that.
nuances. Certainly.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, from a provider perspective.
Move on to something else. But
Yeah, okay,
certainly.
good, well, good, thank you. All right, what's next? Patrick?
Well, Let's do, I'd ask you to expound on something that we were expecting you have a lot of expertise on, your views on foreign policy and current situations in which we face.
Yeah. Well, this comes in a week when, we just had another European capital attacked and many dead. And for me, it gets really personal. A dear friend of ours was on one of the trains as it pulled into the subway station in downtown Brussels. The bomb went off in the front of the train and killed many people. She was at the back of the train. She left covered in soot and dust up a set of stairs into the street with, smoke billowing and the lights having gone out. And she wrote us the other night and said, hey, all of a sudden it got very personal for her and by extension us. And I've spent so much time in Brussels at NATO headquarters, and I've been in and out of that airport many, many times. And I've lived in Brussels for weeks at a time using those subways every day. So, all of a sudden, once again, just like Paris and just like Istanbul several times, and just like that airliner that was shot down in the Sinai, it's coming closer to us. And I think so, as someone who spent his life in defense and security, I have that was my world for many, many, many years. And I would say in general to your question, Patrick, we as a nation have been too interventionist. Okay, we have been too quick to think that we have the right answer, we have the right forces, and we can go somewhere and fix problems that we should, in my opinion, we should not have embarked on in the first place. And I would highlight Iraq as the best example of that. And again, it gets very personal because so many of our friends, our classmates at West Point, this is probably what gets me the most. 5 of my students that I taught history to at West Point are dead because of this Iraq war, and they died fighting, for our nation over there. I think that was ill-advised. So I would take a very different approach in terms of the application of American force. We can do a lot of things in this world, we can do a lot of good, but we have no business doing something such as we did in Iraq. And now, unfortunately, we're having to deal with the blowback and the aftermath of that. And anybody who delinks ISIS from what we did in Iraq isn't reading it right. So, yes.
As a follow-up to that, where do you come down on NSA surveillance of American citizens, and specifically, what's your opinion on Edward Snowden?
Yeah, so what I do when people ask me that question is I pull this little thing out of my pocket. All right, how many of you have one of these in your pocket? Raise your hand. All right, good. So most of you do. Most of you probably place some value in this, right? Does it make your life simpler? Sometimes. All right. All right, so here's the good one. Does it make your life better?
Yes.
Some people say yes, okay? But we typically all have one of these, or we're going to get one of these. So when you get one of these, you give something away, all right? Just by the very fact that everything you do on this is out there in cyberspace, you have made the decision to give away a lot of privacy. All right, if you're banking on this, yeah, you've given away some privacy. If you're running social media on this thing, you're giving away privacy. So our NSA is charged with surveilling the world, surveilling our nation to try to protect us from things like just happened in Brussels. And there is a very, very distinct trade-off between security and privacy. And if we want to have an interconnected world where we all can carry a smartphone around, by definition, we are going to give up some privacy. In terms of Edward Snowden in particular, I think, he is now, if he's not under indictment, he's certainly, is he under indictment?
Probably.
Yeah. So, he gave away a lot of keys to the kingdom. All right. And I've lived in a classified world for many years. That's not the kind of common knowledge that people have. But what Edward Snowden told the world set us back significantly in our ability to fight against the things like happened in Brussels this week. So, on balance, I think his was it was a very bad thing that happened. Now, that doesn't mean that the system couldn't stand some reform, but it's a very complicated issue. But it's one of those things where there's a distinct trade-off, and as we move forward in this world, I would tell you that, if things continue in the current trends, if we continue to have West European capitals that are attacked almost with impunity, we had the same problem on September 11, 2001. And, our ability to surveil all that stuff has prevented subsequent major attacks from happening. And they definitely were out there. There were people who were trying to get us, and there still are people trying to get us. So, all right, what's next? A couple more. Yes, Derrick.